So it's very nice to meet you. Sorry for my late appearance. My name is Pierre, and as you can see, this is a picture of my site. And because I have the immense quality of being a Quebecer, I can speak French, so my site is l'échange, which means trade and exchange. It's a double entendre. I'll talk to you more about that. I want to show you this picture because I want to let you guess what kind of institution this is. But while you guess that, I want to ask you a question. How's COVID going for you? I don't know about you, but here in Quebec, we have very strict lockdown measures. I haven't been able to see my family and my friends for the past years. So green spaces were really a refuge for me. It's no secret for everyone. My friends told you all about that in the last hour, but green areas increase calmness, alertness, and mood. And I was thinking about the concept of confinement and what about inmates? Inmates, they live constantly the mental tolls of confinement. They cannot see their friends, they cannot see their family, and most often than not, they don't have access to the green spaces like we do. And even more, they're more at risk for COVID, as we all know. So obviously, the idea of putting gardens in prison does not come from a first-year MLA student. I'm not the first one who thought about that. In fact, the scientific literature is really clear about how gardens can be used as a restorative tool, especially in carceral environment. It inmates report improved sense of well-being, increased self-efficacy and self-worth, and decreased anxiety. So I thought about this and I chose this site. Here it is. This is the Prison de Montréal-Bordeaux, the Montreal Detention Center. It was built in 1912. It was back then a high security prison, but now it receives inmates that are either in transit for high security prisons or inmates who serve for low severity crimes. Um, it's in Montreal, of course, as you can see in the bottom. I want you to take a look at the site, and this is a plan view, and look around. Inside the walls, there are little to no green spaces. And around it, even if you go outside of the prison, there's just tons of negative space. There's urban disturbances, there are residential environments all over the place. So there's a bunch of constraints here to implement a garden. Just where are you going to put it? So this is my suggestion. This is where I wanted to put the garden. And there were a lot of constraints in terms of design, because when you think about a prison garden, you need to have a sense of enclosure in this really big negative space around, but you can't be too close because there are surveillance issues, of course. I'm going to show you what I did to tackle this issue, but then I'm going to present you my concept statement first. So as discussed by Patrick Mooney, and many other people, the more landscape involves you, the more you are engaged in it, the more restorative it is. So I wanted to make a landscape or a garden that invites involvement from the inmates in order to improve their mental health. So what do I mean by involvement? I'm not actually sure. I read a bunch on this, and it was not clearly defined what exactly involvement is. When I sketch a landscape, I'm really involved. When I garden, I'm really involved, but they're not really the same. So I sort of had fun. I tried to map involvement within the landscape. And why I'm showing you this is that this part of the y-axis here, the high involvement part, is the activities that I want to incite in my garden. So I started iterating. At first, I wanted to play with the concept of the prison shape. Me and Stephanie even fought because she said it was a hexagon. I thought it was a pentagon. I worked on the really strong pentagon form for weeks. And then 3 weeks after, and reminder, this is a project of 5 weeks, 3 weeks after, my instructors really politely told me that using the pentagon was a bad idea. I couldn't resolve the ends. It was kind of a dead end. So iterations after iterations, I kind of arrived at something, the first sort of official layout of the garden. But as you can see here, it needed more legibility, it needed more coherence. There was nothing really tying it together. So iterations after iterations after iterations, I arrived at this final plan. This is called l'échange, as I said. And the reason for that is that l'échange in French means to trade, and it also means to exchange. And both words don't mean the same thing to me. If you look on the right side of the garden, the left side, sorry, I have you could say the exchange room. So contemplative involvement. Here we have a koi pond, we have ornamental flowers, we have wiggly paths that go and wander around the garden. This is a place for contemplative involvement. And if you look on the right, you have the part that's more the trade part of the garden. So I give something to the garden and it gives me something back. So this is really agriculture inclined. Edible flowers, fruit bushes, espalier gardens, and a greenhouse with potting rooms, vertical gardens, and so on. I wanted to make a place where the inmates can feel away, a place where they feel closure, but still that can be pretty open for surveillance purposes. In terms of color, I wanted to offer them a wide variety of colors, something as you can see on Space A that's not too intrusive to really go on a crescendo in the transition for the Space B. And the transition 2 and Space C, as I said, are all edible flowers. We have echinacea, we have marigold, we have fragaria, which is wild strawberry, chamomile, fine herbs, all sorts of edible flowers. So to answer this problem of feeling closure without making too many closed space, I looked at topography a little bit. So you can see a little bit the contour here. The idea is to close the garden within a sort of double mound to give this feeling of closure. This might seem like a crude perspective. It actually took me an unreasonable time to do this, the first two ones on top and the section as well. But I want to show you this sort of closure effect that I wanted to achieve here with the topography and with the greenhouse at the back. So you have at the bottom the koi pond with people with the dock that people can sit on, read a book, lay down on, and a little bridge that goes around it. So this is the poster encompassing it all together. Uh, I'm personally quite proud of this design. It took me a while to achieve, and it has some room for improvement still. But I think that with this place, I would personally like to wander around this. I was imagining myself strolling around this garden when I was designing it, and I want to finish by this quote, which to me represents what this project was about. I'm gonna let you read it. Just 2 seconds. And I learned last semester that according to the rules of public speaking, you should not end a presentation with thank you. But I will say then, I welcome your critical advice.